"Sir, can I get $50 to buy my mom's medicine?" That's all the boy said. No tears, no tricks, just raw desperation behind tired eyes. To a millionaire tech CEO sitting alone in a park, it sounded like just another city scam, until he followed the boy home. What he found wasn't poverty, it was a penthouse. What he expected was a con. What he discovered was a collapsed life hidden behind luxury, and a single mother too proud to ask for help, and too sick to survive without it. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The late afternoon sun filtered through the rustling trees of Central Park, casting long, golden shadows across the pavement. Joggers passed by, earbuds in, lost in their own worlds. Nannies pushed strollers along winding trails, and tourists snapped photos of squirrels like they were rare zoo animals. Amid the quiet hum of city life, a man in a dark tailored suit sat alone on a weathered bench, his gaze fixed on his phone screen. John Whitmore, CEO of one of the country's fastest-growing tech firms, was the sort of man who didn't believe in wasting minutes. Every second was an opportunity to optimize, to scale, to invest. Yet here he was, disconnected, ignoring the buzz of unread emails, letting the crisp autumn air tickle his face as a rare feeling settled over him: emptiness. His head tilted up just as he heard light, hesitant footsteps crunch the gravel. A boy, maybe 8 years old, stood a few feet away, shifting nervously from foot to foot. His sneakers were scuffed, his jeans slightly too short at the ankles, and his hoodie had a rip along the sleeve. His small hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "Sir?" The boy's voice barely rose above a whisper. John blinked, lowering his phone. "Yes." The boy took a tiny step forward. Can I get $50? I need to buy my mom's medicine." The man blinked again. Not because of the request, he was asked for money all the time. But something in the way the boy spoke. It wasn't aggressive, rehearsed, or resentful. His voice cracked in the middle of the sentence. His eyes didn't meet John's. They stared at the gravel like they were ashamed of the words. John glanced around. No adult nearby. No street performer. No scheme. Just a trembling child with too much truth in his voice. "What kind of medicine?" John asked, his voice firmer than he meant it to be. I don't know the name. She gets fevers. Really bad. She didn't wake up this morning for a while." He paused, glancing up. "She said she just needed the pills. But we don't have any money left." John's instinctive skepticism reared up, but it was quickly drowned by something stronger: unease. This boy wasn't trying to hustle him. He looked genuinely tired. His cheeks were sunken slightly. His lips were dry. "You said your mom's sick. Is she at home?" The boy nodded. "Why didn't you call someone?" "An ambulance. We don't have a phone anymore. I tried to tell the neighbor lady, but she didn't answer. So I just came here. People have money here." There was no pride in his voice, no manipulation. Just simple logic, spoken by a child who had run out of options. John reached into his wallet, pulled out a few bills, and handed them over. But as the boy reached out, John stopped. "What's your name?" "Liam." "Liam, I'll give you the money. But I want to come with you. Just to see your mom. Make sure she's okay." Liam froze. His fingers hovered just above the money in John's hand. He looked up at the man, uncertain. John softened his voice. "I won't do anything. I'm not a cop or anything like that. I just want to help." After a pause that stretched for several heartbeats, Liam slowly nodded. "Okay, but we have to walk. It's not far." John stood, slipping his wallet back into his pocket. He looked down at the small boy with the weight of the world in his eyes, and for the first time in a very long time, something shifted in him. He followed Liam out of the park, not knowing that the path they had just started walking would change his life forever. John followed the boy, Liam, out of the park's winding trails, past the vendors selling roasted nuts and pretzels, past a saxophone player busking by a fountain. The boy walked quickly, his small frame tense and alert, as if he were used to moving through the city while trying not to be noticed. He didn't speak, and John didn't push. As they reached the sidewalk, the city's noise swelled. Horns blared. Tires hissed against the wet pavement left behind by street cleaners. People walked by, oblivious to the unlikely pair. A man in a $4,000 suit and a boy in a threadbare hoodie, walking side by side with a quiet intensity. John didn't know why he hadn't simply handed over the money and walked away. It wasn't like him to follow strangers, especially not children. Yet here he was, crossing intersections, watching the back of a skinny boy's head as they turned corner after corner. They passed through a few streets of lower-end bodegas and walk-ups, and John thought, this makes sense. This is where I expected him to live. But then the scenery began to shift. They crossed a wide avenue, entered a district of clean sidewalks and discreet black cars idling at curbs. The architecture sharpened. Brick and faded paint gave way to glass, steel, and polished limestone. Doormen stood tall behind gold-trimmed lobbies. Sidewalks sparkled under designer lights strung between the trees. Liam didn't slow. He walked past a boutique bakery where couples sat at outdoor tables sipping lattes. A woman glanced curiously at them, perhaps wondering why this small boy looked so out of place, why he looked so tired. John quickened his steps. "Liam," he called gently. "Where are we going?" The boy didn't turn. "Home," he said. That was all. Eventually, they stopped in front of a sleek high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows and a brass-plated entrance. A uniformed doorman stood by the door, his hands clasped in front of him. John hesitated. This was wrong. Liam walked straight up to the building. The doorman looked down and gave a subtle nod. "Afternoon, young man," the doorman said kindly. Liam nodded back and pushed through the door without a word. John followed, his thoughts swirling. What was going on? Was this some kind of act? Was he being played? Inside, the lobby gleamed. A chandelier like a suspended galaxy twinkled above sleek marble floors. The front desk clerk gave John a side eye, clearly uncertain about his presence, but said nothing as Liam walked past. The boy pressed the elevator button, then glanced up at John. "You can come. If you want," he mumbled. John stepped inside. The doors closed, and the elevator began its smooth, soundless climb. He stared at the glowing panel. 26, 27, 28. "Top floor?" he asked. Liam nodded. The elevator dinged softly. The doors slid open into a short private vestibule, not a hallway. A single penthouse door stood ahead. Liam pulled a key from his pocket, unlocked the door, and pushed it open. John stepped inside slowly. The air smelled faintly of stale air and lavender cleaning spray. The room was large, high ceilings, tall windows with an unobstructed view of the skyline, modern furniture, and elegant art on the walls. But it wasn't perfect. Dishes cluttered the kitchen island. A lamp in the corner had no bulb. A basket of unfolded laundry sagged on the floor. Then he saw her. A woman lay curled on the velvet sectional couch beneath a thin throw blanket. Her hair clung to her forehead in damp strands. Her skin was pale, far too pale. Her chest rose and fell quickly, almost erratically. Liam rushed to her side. "Mom!" The woman stirred, turning her head slightly. Her eyelids fluttered open, glassy and unfocused. "Liam," she whispered hoarsely. "Did you?" "I brought someone," the boy said quickly. "He wants to help." John crossed the room, heart pounding. He crouched beside the couch. She looked up at him, clearly confused, but too weak to protest. Her cheeks were flushed with fever, her breathing shallow and labored. "She needs a doctor," John said. Liam nodded, biting his lip. "She said we couldn't go, that it costs too much." John stood and pulled out his phone. "No more talking. We're taking her now." Within minutes, he had called a private car, gently lifted the woman into his arms, and carried her down the elevator. Liam followed close behind, gripping the rail in the back seat as they sped through the city. John held the woman the whole way, cradling her like she was made of glass. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But he knew this. No child should be wandering parks alone trying to save his mother. No penthouse should feel this cold. And no one, should suffer this invisibly in a city so full of excess. Something deeper than compassion was stirring inside him. And it scared him. The emergency room buzzed with quiet urgency, nurses moving quickly, a toddler crying down the hall, fluorescent lights humming above sterile floors. John sat on the edge of a stiff plastic chair in the waiting room, his elbows on his knees, fingers laced tightly together. Next to him, Liam sat hunched, hands in his lap, swinging his legs slightly but without rhythm. The boy's hoodie sleeves were pulled down over his hands, and his eyes fixed on the floor as if staring too hard at anything might cause it to collapse. Inside the treatment room, his mother lay behind a curtain of sliding glass, hooked up to 4 fluids and an oxygen monitor. The doctors had spoken in soft but serious tones: dehydration, high fever, bacterial infection, possible pneumonia. Nothing fatal yet. But if she'd waited another day, it could have been. Liam hadn't cried. Not once. He had only asked once in a whisper, "Is she going to die?" John had placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not today," he had said. "She's in the right place now." Now they waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Finally, a nurse came to tell them she was stable and sleeping. Liam asked if he could sit with her. John stayed behind in the waiting room, watching him disappear behind the curtain. Something about the way the boy walked, so small and brave, stung somewhere deep inside him. He hadn't meant to get this involved. He hadn't even planned to sit in the park that day. It had just happened. And now he was knee-deep in someone else's crisis, someone he didn't even know. Yet he felt responsible, not for the illness, not for the poverty, but for doing something now that he knew. The kind of responsibility that sticks when you see something that can't be unseen. Eventually, the boy came back out. "She's asleep," he said. "They said it's okay if she stays tonight." "Good," John replied. "She needs rest." There was a pause. Then Liam asked, "Do you want to go back? I mean, to our place?" John hesitated. "You sure?" Liam shrugged. "There's food there. Not a lot, but I don't want to stay here alone." John nodded. "Okay, let's go." The cab ride back to the high-rise was quiet, broken only by the occasional hum of traffic. When they pulled up in front of the building again, John felt that same tug of disbelief. The place looked more like a billionaire's private retreat than the home of a sick, broke single mother and her child. They took the elevator back up to the penthouse. This time, John looked around more closely. The apartment was large. Very large. Open-plan living room with high-end designer touches. Floor-length linen curtains, sleek modular shelves, abstract paintings hung with precision. The floor was a polished dark oak, and the kitchen counters gleamed under spotlights. But underneath the luxury there were signs. Subtle ones. The fridge was nearly empty. A few condiments. A half loaf of bread. No milk. There were unopened bills stacked haphazardly on the marble counter. The thermostat blinked with a red warning. System offline, no service plan. In the living room, a bottle of expired children's cough syrup lay forgotten on a bookshelf. John wandered further in, feeling like he was trespassing. The master bedroom was clean but sparse. No fresh linens, no personal touches beyond a dusty jewelry box, and a single photo of a younger woman holding a baby on her hip, both smiling on a beach. Liam hovered in the doorway. "She doesn't let me sleep in there," he said. "She says I should have space. But I sleep on the couch anyway near her." John nodded slowly. "How long has she been sick?" "A while," Liam said. "Since before my birthday. She had a job. She worked at a magazine. Then she got sick and lost it. She said everything went bad after that." "And your dad?" Liam's face turned cold. "He left. He doesn't help us." That was all. John didn't push. Instead, he opened the kitchen cupboard, found a nearly empty box of crackers, and handed it to the boy. Liam took it wordlessly, chewing slowly as he sat on the couch. John looked around the penthouse once more. How many people in the world would give anything for a place like this? And yet here it was, glittering on the outside, hollow on the inside. A shell of wealth. A beautiful coffin for a life slowly unraveling. He sat beside the boy, both of them surrounded by silence, by contradictions, by questions that didn't yet have answers. And John knew, without needing to say it out loud, that this wasn't going to be a one-time act of charity. He was already in too deep. The morning light bled into the penthouse slowly, brushing soft gold across the cold floors and cream-colored walls. John had barely slept. He'd taken the guest room, but the silence in the apartment was suffocating. Too quiet, as if the air itself were holding its breath. Liam had fallen asleep curled up in a blanket on the sectional where his mother had been. At some point in the night, he had dragged a pillow from her room and tucked it under his head. Now he lay still, lips slightly parted, hair mussed. A child at rest, and yet there was tension even in his sleep. His body curled in on itself, like he was protecting something, or someone. John stood in the kitchen, staring at a chipped mug filled with black coffee he had made from a half-empty tin he found above the stove. He didn't drink it. He was watching the skyline through the window, trying to make sense of everything. The penthouse, the sickness, the boy in the park. It all felt like a dream, but the silence was real. So was the weight in his chest. Around 9 a.m., the buzz of the door intercom pulled him from his thoughts. It was the hospital. Michelle, Liam's mother, had taken a turn. Nothing fatal, but her fever had spiked again, and she was delirious. The nurse advised they transfer her to another facility, one with better equipment. "Can you come in?" she asked. "I'm on my way," John replied instantly. He gently shook Liam awake. The boy blinked up at him, dazed. "Is it Mom? She needs us. We're going to the hospital." Liam was already halfway off the couch before John had finished speaking. He didn't even put on socks, just pulled his shoes over bare feet and zipped up his hoodie with shaking fingers. By the time they arrived, Michelle was being wheeled into a private room. Her skin looked worse, ashen with blotchy red patches. Her lips were cracked. She murmured things that made no sense. Liam ran to her side, grabbing her hand, tears finally breaking free and running silently down his cheeks. John stood by, helpless, useless. Then something inside him clicked. He walked out of the room, straight to the main desk, and asked to speak to the attending physician. 10 minutes later, he was back, papers in hand, his credit card already charged. He had her transferred immediately to St. Gabriel's private medical center across town, one of the best in the city. He paid for a private ambulance and accompanied her himself. Liam rode with them, clutching her hand in the back while an EMT monitored her vitals. John sat in the front passenger seat, staring straight ahead. He was no stranger to money. He'd seen it used as a weapon, a shield, a tool, a leash. But today, he was using it for something that actually mattered. And for once, it didn't feel dirty. St. Gabriel's smelled like antiseptic and luxury. Whitewashed walls, soft lighting, quiet halls. Within the hour, Michelle was stabilized in a temperature-controlled room with 2 nurses monitoring her vitals and a specialist reviewing her blood work. When the doctor finally came out, John was pacing the hallway. "She'll be okay," the doctor said. "She needs rest, fluids, antibiotics. Her immune system is depleted severely, but she's strong. A few more days and she'll be past the worst of it." John exhaled, really exhaled, for the first time since the park bench. He turned to see Liam sitting in a waiting chair, arms crossed tight over his chest, feet swinging off the edge again. The boy didn't look up until John walked over and sat beside him. "She's going to be okay," John said. Liam looked at him hard. "Are you sure?" John nodded. "Yeah, she's strong." The boy's lower lip trembled. "She didn't want to go to the hospital. She said we couldn't afford it. She didn't want anyone to know." "I know," John said quietly. "She was trying to protect you." There was silence. Then, finally, Liam whispered, "Thank you." 2 words. Small and simple. But they landed with the force of a mountain. That evening, Liam was allowed into the room for a few minutes. Michelle had regained partial consciousness. Her voice was weak, but her eyes fluttered open when her son called her name. She smiled faintly at him, whispering something that only he could hear. John stood just outside the doorway, watching as the boy laid his head gently on her shoulder. It was the kind of moment that brands itself into the human soul. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just pure, raw, real. After Liam left her side and fell asleep in a chair in the corner, John sat down by her bed. Michelle looked at him through half-lidded eyes. "You brought me here?" she asked, voice rasping. John nodded. "Yes." "You paid for it?" "Yes." She swallowed, and a tear slid down her temple. "Why?" she whispered. "You don't even know us." John leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "Because your son asked me for $50, he said. And somehow in that one moment, I remembered what it's like to care. The room was dim and quiet. Only the steady beep of the heart monitor reminded John that life still pulsed gently in the body lying before him. Michelle had drifted back to sleep after their brief exchange, her hand resting lightly on the blanket, her line taped across her wrist like a fragile ribbon. John sat in the hospital chair, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the floor. The lights from the city outside glowed faintly through the blinds, softening the harshness of the hospital walls. Liam was asleep again, curled up in the armchair by the window, arms wrapped around a spare pillow as though it were a shield against the world. It was the third day. Michelle had improved significantly. The fever had broken during the night. She was awake longer now, eating small meals, speaking in soft sentences that no longer slurred or fractured. The doctors assured John she'd be able to return home within another day or two. But John wasn't in a rush. He needed to understand. And now so did she. That afternoon, she looked at him with clearer eyes than before. No longer a patient, no longer just a woman on the edge of collapse, but someone aware. Someone ready to speak. "You've been here every day," she said, her voice still hoarse but steadier now. "I couldn't leave," John said simply. Michelle smiled faintly. "That sounds romantic. Or terrifying." John chuckled under his breath. "Honestly, I'm not sure which one it is yet." A silence settled between them. It wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that clears the air before something heavy arrives. She shifted slightly in bed. "You deserve the truth. You didn't just save my life. You stepped into a mess without knowing what it was." "I didn't care," he replied. "Still don't." But she was already starting. "My name is Michelle Cooper. I used to be the creative director for Maison Elle, the fashion magazine. I worked there for 11 years. Climbed my way up from editorial assistant to director. I was proud of that." John nodded, listening. "I met Liam's father at a charity gala. Marcus Whitcomb. He owned half the buildings in the city, real estate tycoon, charming, smooth-talking. I didn't grow up with much, so I fell for the story he told. That I could have it all, and that he loved that I didn't need his money. It felt real." She paused. "It wasn't." John didn't interrupt. "We got married. It was a whirlwind. He bought the penthouse as a wedding gift. Not in my name, our name. I didn't care. I was in love. I had my career. I had Liam. That was enough." She turned her head toward the window, voice lowering. But when Liam was 4, Marcus started disappearing. Late nights, strange calls, cold silences. When I asked questions, he became cruel. Quietly, but cruel. I found out about the other woman by accident, saw a text on his tablet when he left it at home. John leaned back slowly, absorbing every word. "I filed for divorce. I thought I'd done everything right. I had proof of infidelity. I was confident. But Marcus," she sighed, "Marcus had lawyers. Real ones. The kind who can find the cracks in anything. He played dirty. Claimed I had abandoned the marriage. Said I was emotionally unstable. Got a doctor to say I showed signs of chronic anxiety. He drained our accounts, took control of the assets, and then offered me custody of Liam in exchange for me signing away any claim to spousal support or property." Her jaw clenched. "I signed. For my son. I didn't care about the rest." John felt his chest tighten. "I kept the penthouse, technically. It was in a trust for Liam. But Marcus stripped it bare. Froze the accounts. Cut off all utilities and credit lines that were once shared. Said it wasn't his responsibility. Left us there like goldfish in a glass bowl, shiny from the outside but slowly dying inside. She looked at him then, tears in the corners of her eyes. I couldn't sell the place. The deed's locked in a clause until Liam turns 18. And with no income, I couldn't even rent it out legally. I tried working again, but the fashion world isn't kind to women with gaps in their resume and a child at home. Then I got sick. Really sick. And the last job I had let me go after I missed 3 days. The emotion rose in her throat. She swallowed it back. I used to be someone, she whispered. Now I can't even afford my son's breakfast some days. John sat in stunned silence. The sharp edge in her story cut deeper than he expected. This wasn't some sob tale from a stranger on a park bench. This was a system failure, a collapse, a betrayal lined with expensive wallpaper and lawyers in Italian suits. You should have called someone, he said quietly. I did, she replied. Once. My pride stopped me after that. No one wants to help the woman who once hosted fundraisers and now lives off dry crackers and tap water. She looked away, ashamed. Liam, he doesn't know the full story. He just knows we have to survive. He's the one who kept us going. He even tried to sell his old toys online to get grocery money. John leaned forward, elbows on his knees, jaw clenched tight. And the $50? She shook her head, laughing bitterly. I told him not to. Told him I'd be fine. But I think he saw something in my eyes that morning. Something scared him. So he left, and I didn't even know. A long silence followed. Then she said, You must think I'm a fool. I think you're the strongest damn person I've met in a long time, John said. She looked at him, surprised. I've known people who have everything and still collapse under pressure, he continued. You had everything stripped away and somehow managed to raise a boy like Liam. That's not weakness, Michelle. That's power most people never even understand. Her eyes softened. For a moment, she looked like someone coming back to life. You really think so? She asked, barely above a whisper. I don't think. I know. She turned her face toward the window, wiping a tear away before it could fall. The skyline stretched endlessly before them, a city of people with stories no one ever hears. But here, in this small room, one of those stories had finally found a listener. 2 weeks had passed since Michelle was discharged from the hospital. The penthouse was warmer now, not from the thermostat, which John had quietly reinstated by paying the building's overdue maintenance fees, but from something else. Life. Movement. A hum that hadn't existed in the weeks, maybe months, before. John stood in the kitchen one morning, brewing real coffee from a bag he had delivered the day before. Liam sat at the island, chewing on toast slathered with peanut butter, his face still puffed with sleep, but his cheeks pink and healthy. He had gained weight, smiled more, laughed sometimes when no one was looking. He even had a backpack now, a new one, with superhero patches stitched in. John had let him pick it out online. Michelle entered the room slowly, barefoot, wrapped in a pale sweater. Her steps were careful but no longer frail. She moved like someone recovering not just physically, but mentally, like someone remembering how to be again. She gave John a small, tired smile. You didn't have to stay. John returned it. You say that every morning. And yet here I am. Michelle poured herself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter. Her hair was tied up now, clean, with a few loose strands framing her face. There was still exhaustion in her eyes, but there was also light behind it. A spark. Maybe even fire. You need to get back to your company, she said softly. He shrugged. My calendar can wait. My board will survive. Besides, I've got someone covering operations for now. You're a CEO. You built a billion-dollar company. And right now, he replied, I'd rather help you rebuild something than build another app. She looked at him, longer this time. Not as a stranger. Not as a rescuer. As someone unexpected. Liam's voice cut through. Mom, can I bring the leftover muffins for the lady downstairs? The one with the little dog. Mrs. Durney? Yeah. She always asks if you're doing better. Michelle smiled, eyes softening. That's sweet, honey. Yes, you can. He grabbed the container from the counter and dashed off toward the hallway. John waited until he was gone before speaking again. Michelle, he said gently, I know this is hard to talk about, but what's your plan? She exhaled, setting her mug down. I don't know. I've been trying to find work. I applied to a few places. Entry-level stuff. The kind of jobs I thought I was done with 10 years ago. She shook her head. No responses. John took a breath, then pulled out his phone. He opened an app and slid it across the counter toward her. On the screen was a sleek design mock-up, a digital storefront for a new fashion tech brand. Minimalist. Clean. Sharp. She looked at it, then looked back at him. What's this? A project I've been sitting on for a year. A fashion tech initiative. Wearable innovation for modern living. Smart textiles, sustainable materials, the whole thing. I shelved it because I didn't have the right creative mind behind it. He paused, then said clearly, I want you to be that person. Michelle froze. You are offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership. Creative director. You'll oversee brand identity, storytelling, design integration, everything. I have the infrastructure and funding. You have the vision. She looked stunned. I don't want charity, she said, almost too quickly. This isn't charity. This is opportunity. And believe me, I don't offer those lightly. She stared at him, eyes narrowing slightly. Why me? Because I've read your work. Your old campaigns. Your art direction was groundbreaking. You took risks no one else did. And because, he hesitated, then leaned in slightly. You've been to the bottom. You know how to fight. That's the kind of voice I want leading this brand. Michelle swallowed hard. I haven't worked in years. Then now's the time to start again. She shook her head, but the resistance was weakening. It's been so long. You're still her. The woman who built a name in an industry that eats people alive. That's not something you lose. It just gets buried under survival. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter. Then quietly she asked, And if I say no? I'll leave, John said without pause. Not because I want to, but because I respect that it's your life. I didn't come into it to take control, just to give you a door. Whether you walk through it is your choice. Michelle stared at the screen again. The colors, the lines, the possibilities. Slowly, deliberately, she reached out and pulled the phone toward her. I want to earn this, she said. You will, he replied. And you already have more than you think. The next few days were a whirlwind. John brought in his startup team, young, hungry developers, designers, and marketers. He introduced Michelle as the new lead. At first, they looked skeptical. She was older, quieter, unfamiliar. But within minutes of her first brainstorming session, the energy in the room shifted. She asked sharp questions, challenged assumptions, sketched out 2 mood boards and a full seasonal concept in an hour. By the end of the meeting, the skepticism had melted. She wasn't just good, she was electric. That night, back at the penthouse, Liam came into the living room to find his mom working on a tablet John had gifted her. Sketching ideas, muttering to herself, her eyes alive again. Mom, he asked. She looked up. Yes, baby? You look like you used to. Like before. She didn't say anything at first. Then she reached for his hand and kissed the back of it. So do you. Spring arrived quietly that year, as if it were unsure whether it was welcome. The trees along Fifth Avenue blossomed in hesitant whites and soft pinks, and the streets hummed with a fresher kind of energy, still fast, still brash, but laced with renewal. It was a Saturday morning. The kind of morning New York doesn't often give. Warm light, slow wind, no sirens. In a sunlit loft in Soho, rented on a short-term contract by Whitmore Industries for their new fashion tech startup, Michelle stood at the center of a wide, open space with her arms crossed, surveying the first full production prototype of the wearable line she'd designed. Her name was on the concept board. Her logo, her fabric selections, her sketches, all brought to life by a team that now looked to her not just with respect, but with admiration. The product line launch was scheduled in 3 weeks. Major press outlets had already booked interviews. A few fashion insiders had caught whispers and started buzzing. But none of that was the real win. The real win was that she had come back to life. Michelle moved through the room, her heels clicking lightly against polished concrete. She adjusted the collar on one of the mannequins, straightened a line of fabric samples, then paused to take it all in. Just weeks ago, she had been half-conscious on a hospital bed. And now, here she was rebuilt, not rescued. She had rebuilt herself with her own voice, her own hands. A soft knock on the office glass made her turn. John entered, holding 2 cups of coffee. He offered one to her wordlessly, and she accepted it with a quiet smile. He looked around the loft. It's all coming together. It is, she said, sipping. Still doesn't feel real. He nodded. It's real. And you did it. She looked at him, curious. Why did you really do all this, John? Not just the company. Everything. He leaned against the desk, eyes thoughtful. Because for the first time in years, I saw something worth building that wasn't just numbers or market share. I saw a boy who deserved to feel safe. A woman who deserved to be heard. And maybe, I needed to remember I still had that in me. Michelle studied him. You changed. He smiled. You changed me. The moment hovered, delicate and charged. Not romantic in the cinematic sense. There were no violins, no proclamations. Just 2 people standing in the aftermath of survival, finally seeing each other with unclouded eyes. That evening, back at the penthouse, Liam sat at the dining table doing his homework. A plate of sliced apples and peanut butter sat beside him. His feet didn't dangle from the chair anymore. He'd grown just enough. He was laughing at something on his worksheet when Michelle walked in. What's so funny? She asked. Nothing. My math teacher made a joke about penguins and percentages. He held up the sheet. Mom, I got everything right today. She beamed. I'm not surprised. I want to be an inventor, he said suddenly. Michelle blinked. Oh, yeah. Like Mr. John, but for kids. Things kids need but no one makes. He looked at her. You think I can? She leaned down and kissed the top of his head. I think you can do whatever you want. Later that night, when the apartment was quiet again, Michelle stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The lights stretched on forever, blinking like constellations in the man-made sky. John stepped out beside her, holding 2 mugs of chamomile tea this time. They stood in silence, side by side. This place, it used to feel like a cage, Michelle said softly. But now? It feels different. John sipped his tea. Because it's not where you live anymore. It's where you started again. She turned to him. What happens now? He shrugged. We keep going. You run a company. Liam goes to school. I try to be less of a corporate robot. And maybe we just stay connected. No obligations. Just whatever this becomes. Michelle nodded. I like that. He smiled. Me too. Weeks turned to months. The brand launched. It succeeded, modestly at first, then quickly gaining traction. Michelle was invited to speak on panels, then featured in magazines, then called a comeback force by Vogue. But that was background noise. Liam excelled in school. He joined the robotics club. He made friends. John kept showing up, not to fix things, but to be present. At parent-teacher meetings. At company events. Sometimes just for dinner. Not as a savior. Not as a CEO. But as himself. The boy who once asked a stranger for $50 never had to ask again. Because someone finally listened. Because someone stayed. Because someone believed. And so, under the same skyline where everything had once fallen apart, something far rarer had grown. A new beginning. One built not on wealth or pity, but on love, resilience, and the extraordinary courage it takes to let someone see your broken pieces, and to build something beautiful with them. Together. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.